My name is Amber Wilson, and I'm 32 years old. Nothing can truly prepare you for the moment you come home to find your 8-year-old daughter alone, scrubbing the floor on her hands and knees. I work in marketing, and my career often takes me away from home. But on that particular day, I returned early, and what I found would change everything. Madison, my sweet 8-year-old girl, was shaking when I walked in. My in-laws had never fully embraced her since Scott and I got married. They had taken their real granddaughter, Lily, to an amusement park instead. What happened next would change our family forever. Where are you watching from today? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to hit subscribe as you join me in sharing the story of how I stood up for my daughter when no one else would. I've always been someone focused on my career, working my way up in digital marketing, all while balancing motherhood. But don't get me wrong, Madison is and always has been my #1 priority. Some days, it feels impossible to juggle everything, but we make it work. I met Scott 6 years ago at a friend's barbecue. At the time, Madison was just 2 years old, a curly-haired toddler who instantly captured Scott's heart. From the very start, he treated her like his own. He'd get down on the floor to play with her, read her stories with silly voices, and never once treated her any differently because she wasn't biologically his. Madison came into my life after a tragedy. My cousin, Stephanie, had been my best friend since childhood. When she and her husband died in a car accident, their daughter Madison had no one. I was only 24, single and scared, but I knew I had to step up. The adoption process was emotional, but it was necessary. Madison deserved stability, and I promised I would give that to her. A year after we met, Scott proposed, and he included Madison in the sweetest way. He knelt down with 2 rings, one for me, and a small heart necklace for Madison, and asked if we would both be honored to become his family. After our wedding, Scott legally adopted Madison too. Our little family was whole, both on paper and in our hearts. It was then that I met Robert and Eleanor Henderson, Scott's parents. At first, they seemed pleasant, though a little reserved. They brought Madison gifts, but their smiles never reached their eyes. When they hugged her, it felt a bit off. I thought they just needed time to warm up to the idea of this instant family situation. She's a pretty little thing, Eleanor had said, examining Madison's features. Doesn't look much like either of you though. Her comment stung, but Scott quickly explained that Madison was adopted, and I appreciated how he said it without hesitation. No apologies. Then there was Michael, Scott's younger brother, and his daughter, Lily. Coincidentally, Lily was also 8, born just 2 months after Madison. The cousins got along well at first, playing together during family events while the adults watched. But over time, I started to notice a troubling pattern. At family gatherings, the grandparents always brought to gifts, but Lily's were always bigger or more expensive. They'd take photos with both girls, but only the ones with Lily made it to social media. When Madison would speak, Eleanor sometimes seemed to ignore her, while Lily's every word was given attention. Scott noticed too. After a particularly obvious Christmas, where Lily got a tablet and Madison only got coloring books, he had a private conversation with his parents. Madison is my daughter, he told them. I need you to treat her with the same love and attention you give Lily. They denied any favoritism. Of course not, Robert said. You're just being oversensitive. But the pattern continued. At Easter, they'd hide more eggs for Lily to find. At Thanksgiving, they'd ask Lily about school, but not Madison. These were small things, but they added up, like tiny cuts to Madison's sense of belonging. Why doesn't Grandma Eleanor ask me to bake cookies with her like she does with Lily? Madison once asked in a small voice. I had no good answer. I tried to create special traditions just for the 2 of us, and Scott was incredibly supportive. He always validated Madison's feelings while trying to keep the peace. They're from a different generation, he'd say. They'll come around eventually. I wasn't so sure, but I respected his desire to believe the best in his parents. This delicate family balance made it hard when I had to attend a business conference in Chicago. I had been putting it off for months, but when my boss made it clear I had to be there for an important client meeting, I finally gave in. Scott promised he would take care of everything with Madison's school drop-offs, dance class, homework, the whole routine. We'll be fine, babe, he promised, kissing my forehead as I fretted about my packing. Madison and I will have a daddy-daughter weekend. Maybe we'll build that birdhouse we've been talking about. Madison seemed okay with the plan too, excited about the special time with Scott. Everything seemed perfect until it wasn't. 2 days before my departure, Scott received an urgent call from his company's Boston office. A major client was threatening to pull their account, and Scott's presence was needed immediately. We scrambled to find alternate childcare, but our regular babysitter was away at college, and our backup was already booked. Scott suggested his parents. They'd been asking to spend more time with Madison. This could be good for their relationship, he reasoned. I hesitated, remembering all those small moments of favoritism. I wondered if my mom could fly in from Arizona. But Scott reminded me, look, I know my parents aren't perfect, but they're capable caregivers. It's just 3 days, and I'll be back before you know it. Reluctantly, I agreed. We didn't have many options, and I wanted to believe this could be a turning point in their relationship with Madison. Maybe some one-on-one time would be just what they needed. The morning I left, Eleanor and Robert arrived at our house with overnight bags. We've got everything under control, Eleanor assured me, barely looking up from her phone. We raised 2 boys. 1 little girl will be a breeze. I knelt down to Madison's level. Be good for Grandma and Grandpa, okay? I'll call every night, and Daddy will be back in 3 days. Madison nodded bravely, but I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. I'll be okay, Mommy. I'll help with chores and everything. I smiled at her, though my heart ached. You don't need to worry about chores, sweetie. Just be a kid and have fun. We shared our usual goodbye, our special phrase, I love you more than all the stars in the sky. I love you to the moon and back, she whispered, her small arms wrapped around me in a tight hug. The meetings in Chicago were back to back, but I made time to video call Madison every evening. The first night, she seemed fine, though a little quieter than usual. She told me they had spaghetti for dinner and watched a movie afterward. Are you having fun with Grandma and Grandpa? I asked. It's okay, she replied with a shrug. Grandma made me pick up my toys twice. She said I was messy. I frowned. Madison was actually a pretty tidy 8-year-old. Well, remember, it's their house rules while you're there. Just 2 more days, sweetie. The second night's call was shorter. Robert answered instead of Madison, saying she was finishing her dinner and would call me back. But that call never came. When I tried again before bed, Eleanor answered, sounding irritated. She's already asleep. She was overtired from playing all day, Eleanor said. We'll have her call you tomorrow. Something felt off, but I couldn't figure out exactly why. Scott later called to say his meetings in Boston were running longer than expected. My parents are okay with staying an extra day, he told me. I should be back the day after tomorrow, and you'll be home the day after that. On the 3rd day of my trip, something unexpected happened. The client we'd been courting signed early, meaning our final 2 days of meetings were canceled. Suddenly, I found myself with the opportunity to fly home early. Are you sure you don't want to stay and do some sightseeing? My colleague asked. Chicago's beautiful this time of year, but all I could think about was getting home to Madison. The brief, awkward calls with my in-laws had left me uneasy, and I couldn't wait to see Madison's face when I walked through the door. I decided not to tell anyone I was coming home early. I'd surprise Madison and relieve my in-laws sooner than expected. A win for everyone. On the flight, I felt a growing sense of anxiety, mixed with excitement. As I landed, I tried calling the house from the airport, but no one answered. I texted Scott to let him know I was heading home early. That's great, he replied. Still stuck in Boston. Client issues are more complicated than expected. Love you both. When I arrived in our neighborhood, I noticed something strange. Robert and Eleanor's car wasn't in the driveway. It was a Thursday afternoon. Where could they have gone with Madison? Maybe they took her to the park or for ice cream. Still, something didn't feel right. I parked the car and grabbed my luggage. The spring air was unexpectedly cool as I made my way to the front door. Our house seemed unusually quiet. Hello, Madison? Anyone home? I called out, setting down my bags. The silence that greeted me sent a chill down my spine. I moved through the house, calling Madison's name with growing urgency. The living room was empty, though I noticed Madison's favorite stuffed rabbit, Mr. Flopsy, discarded on the floor. That was strange. Madison rarely went anywhere without him. The dining room showed signs of a rushed lunch, crumbs on the table, a half-empty glass of water. Madison, I called again, my voice echoing through the quiet house. Then I heard it, a faint sniffling sound, followed by the distinct sound of scrubbing. My heart pounded as I rushed toward the noise. Nothing could have prepared me for what I saw when I entered the kitchen. There, on her hands and knees on the cold tile floor, was Madison. She was scrubbing vigorously with a large brush in her small hands, her face streaked with dried tears, her curls damp with sweat. A bucket of soapy water sat beside her. She was wearing the same clothes I had seen her in during our brief video call the night before. She didn't even notice me at first, so focused was she on the floor. "Madison," I finally managed, my voice barely above a whisper. She startled, the brush clattering to the floor as her head whipped around. For a brief second, fear flashed across her face, a look I'd never seen directed at me before. But then, recognition dawned. "Mommy," she said in a small, uncertain voice, as if she couldn't quite believe I was really there. I crossed the kitchen in 3 strides and knelt beside her, not caring that my business slacks were soaking up the soapy water. "Baby, what are you doing? Where are Grandma and Grandpa?" Madison's lower lip trembled as fresh tears welled in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Mommy. I spilled grape juice this morning and made a big mess. Grandma said I needed to learn responsibility, so I have to clean the whole kitchen floor before they get back." My blood ran cold. "The whole floor? Madison, where did they go?" She looked down, her small shoulders slumping. "They took Lily to Adventure World, the amusement park with the big roller coasters. They left me here alone." I struggled to keep my voice steady, though rage was building inside me. "They took Lily to the park and left you here alone?" Madison nodded. "Grandma said I couldn't go because I wouldn't appreciate it like Lily would. She said Lily deserves special treats because she's the real granddaughter." Her voice broke on the last words, and my heart shattered. I pulled her into my arms, feeling her small body tremble against mine. "How long have you been alone, sweetheart?" "Since after breakfast," she whispered against my shoulder. "Grandma said they'd be back for dinner. She said I better have the floor spotless by then or I wouldn't get any dessert, and that I needed to think about why I'm so clumsy all the time." For 4 hours they had left my 8-year-old daughter alone, on her hands and knees, scrubbing floors while they took their real granddaughter to the amusement park. I felt physically ill. "Has this happened before? Them leaving you alone?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Madison hesitated, then nodded. "Yesterday they went shopping with Lily. They said I couldn't come because I whined too much about being bored. They were gone a long time." I was scared. I closed my eyes, fighting back tears of rage and guilt. "What else happened while I was away?" "Madison, you can tell me anything. I promise I won't be mad at you." Her story spilled out in fits and starts: how Lily had been given new toys while Madison watched, how Madison had been made to do chores like dishes and dusting while Lily played. She told me about how Eleanor had repeatedly said Madison wasn't really family and didn't have Henderson blood. "Grandma said I should be grateful that you and Daddy took me in, because nobody else wanted me," Madison said matter-of-factly, her voice so calm it broke my heart. Each word felt like a knife to my soul. I held Madison tighter, rocking her gently in my arms. "Listen to me very carefully. Madison Elizabeth Wilson Henderson, you are not lucky we took you in. We are the lucky ones. Every single day, I thank my lucky stars that I get to be your mom. You are the most precious, most important person in my life, and I am so sorry this happened." She pulled back, her eyes wide. "You're not mad at me for spilling the juice?" "Of course not," I assured her, brushing her damp curls back. "Accidents happen. Everyone spills things sometimes. No one should ever make you clean an entire floor as punishment, and they absolutely should never, ever have left you alone. That was wrong of them, not you." I helped Madison to her feet, noticing for the first time how exhausted she looked. There were angry red marks on her knees from kneeling on the hard floor for so long, and her hands were pruned and raw from the cleaning solution. "Let's get you cleaned up, and then we're going to have some ice cream," I said, decisively. I led her to the bathroom and helped her wash her hands and face. My mind raced with fury and plans. "Am I in trouble with Grandma when they come back?" Madison asked as I applied lotion to her chapped hands. "No, baby, you're not in trouble with anyone," I said firmly. "But Grandma and Grandpa are in very big trouble with me." Madison's eyes widened. "Are you going to yell at them?" I took a deep breath. "No, I'm not going to yell, but I am going to make sure this never happens again. No one treats my daughter this way. No one." After getting Madison cleaned up, I took her out for ice cream at her favorite shop downtown. As she happily worked her way through a rainbow sherbet cone, I studied her closely, noticing things I hadn't seen in my initial shock. She seemed thinner after just a few days. Dark circles were under her eyes, and her usual animated chatter was subdued. She kept glancing at me, as if for reassurance. Madison, I need you to tell me everything that happened while I was gone, I said gently. Not just today, but all 3 days. Even things you think might make me sad or upset. It's really important. Slowly, between licks of ice cream, Madison opened up. The picture that emerged was worse than I had feared. The first day had been okay, tense but manageable. By the second day, the differential treatment had become obvious. Lily had been allowed to watch TV while Madison had to read quietly. When both girls had gotten excited during a game, only Madison had been scolded for being out of control. Grandma said Lily knows how to act like a proper young lady because she has good breeding, Madison reported, clearly not understanding the full implications of the words. What does breeding mean, Mommy? Like dogs? She asked. I swallowed hard. It's a very old-fashioned and incorrect way of talking about families. Grandma shouldn't have said that. Then came the revelation that Madison had been made to eat different foods, simpler, less favorite options, while Lily got her preferred meals. When Madison had asked for the same chicken nuggets Lily got, Eleanor had told her, those are special for Lily. You can have a sandwich. The amusement park trip wasn't the only outing Madison had been excluded from either. They had taken Lily to a movie the previous afternoon, leaving Madison at home with stern instructions to think about her behavior. What behavior? I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral despite my rising anger. Madison shrugged. Grandma said I was disrespectful when I asked if I could have dessert like Lily did. But Lily got ice cream, and I didn't get any. I took a deep breath, trying to keep calm for Madison's sake. Was that bad to ask? No, sweetheart, I assured her. That wasn't bad at all. By the time we finished our ice cream, I had made up my mind. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a one-time poor decision. This was a pattern of emotional abuse and neglect directed at my child, and it was going to end today. I tried calling Scott again, but it went straight to voicemail. I sent him a text instead. Call me ASAP. Emergency with your parents and Madison at home. I ran Madison a bubble bath, something she loved, and let her play while I paced in the hallway, phone in hand. When Scott finally called back, his voice was tense with worry. What's wrong? Is Madison okay? I stepped into our bedroom and closed the door before letting everything spill out, finding Madison alone. The scrubbing, the amusement park, everything. Scott's initial disbelief quickly gave way to horror, then rage. They left her alone for hours? He shouted, his voice rising with each word. And they said those things to her about not being real family? Yes, I confirmed, keeping my voice low so Madison wouldn't hear. This is beyond favoritism. This is emotional abuse. And leaving an 8-year-old alone for hours is neglect, possibly even criminal. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then I'm coming home, Scott said firmly. I'll get the next flight out. What about your client? I asked. Forget the client, Scott said with an intensity I rarely heard from him. My daughter comes first, always, I whispered. We made a plan before Scott came home. I told him we needed to handle the situation carefully, especially since Madison had already been through so much. We agreed not to create a scene in front of her or Lily. The girls shouldn't witness any adult confrontation. I'll try to get home as quickly as possible, Scott said. But in the meantime, you handle things with my parents. Be calm, but firm. They need to pack their things and leave, either to a hotel or back home. I don't care. But they're not staying here, and they're not going to have unsupervised access to Madison again. I nodded, feeling a weight lift off my chest, knowing we were on the same page. They're going to fight this, Scott warned. They'll say we're overreacting. They'll say leaving her alone wasn't a big deal. That kids need discipline. Let them, I said with a new resolve in my voice. I don't care what excuses they make. They left our daughter alone for hours after making her feel worthless. There's no coming back from that. I hung up the phone and checked on Madison, who was happily playing with her bath toys. She seemed a little more relaxed now, her earlier tension melting away. I sat on the edge of the tub and helped her wash her hair, fighting back tears as I noticed a small bruise on her shoulder. How did you get this, sweetie? I asked casually, trying to keep my tone light. Oh, Madison said, barely glancing at it. Grandma grabbed me there when I dropped a plate yesterday. It was an accident though. I was being clumsy. I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stay calm for Madison's sake. That's not being clumsy. That's just being a normal kid. And adults should never grab children hard enough to leave marks, even if they're frustrated. After her bath, I helped Madison into her favorite pajamas, though it was still early in the afternoon. She needed comfort, not proper dinner attire. We cuddled on the couch, watching her favorite movie, Mommy, are Grandma and Grandpa in trouble? When they come back? Madison asked as I tucked Mr. Flopsy into her arms. No, baby, I said firmly. You're not in trouble with anyone. But Grandma and Grandpa are in very big trouble with me. Her eyes widened. Are you going to yell at them? I considered this for a moment before answering. No, I'm not going to yell. But I am going to make sure this never happens again. No one treats my daughter this way. No one. I kissed her forehead and asked her to play in her room when they returned. I promised I would call her down later. Are you sure you're not mad at me, Mommy? Madison asked quietly as I tucked her in. I have never been more sure of anything in my life, I told her, my voice steady. I love you more than you could ever know. As I closed her door, I heard a car pull into the driveway. My heart started to race. I squared my shoulders and went downstairs to meet them, preparing myself for whatever came next. The front door swung open with the sound of laughter. Eleanor entered first, holding shopping bags emblazoned with the Adventure World logo. Behind her came Robert, carrying a tired-looking Lily on his shoulders. None of them noticed me standing in the living room until I cleared my throat. Eleanor jumped, clutching her chest. Amber, good heavens, you scared me. What are you doing home? Where's Madison? Robert asked, looking around as he lowered Lily to the ground. Madison is upstairs, I said, my voice steady, though fury burned inside me. She's resting after spending 4 hours scrubbing the kitchen floor alone in an empty house. Eleanor's face flickered with guilt. At least I thought it was guilt before it settled into a defensive frown. Oh, don't be so dramatic. She made a mess and needed to clean it up. It's called teaching responsibility. Responsibility? I repeated, keeping my voice level. You call leaving an 8-year-old child alone for hours while you take her cousin to an amusement park teaching responsibility? Robert stepped forward, setting the bags down. Amber, it wasn't like that. Madison was being difficult this morning, throwing a tantrum about the juice. She needed some quiet time to think about her behavior. A tantrum? I asked. Madison told me she spilled juice and apologized immediately. Well, she would say that, wouldn't she? Eleanor sniffed, removing her jacket. I've noticed she tends to twist the truth when it suits her. Not like our Lily. Her casual cruelty made my blood boil, but I held my composure. Regardless of what happened with the juice, you left an 8-year-old child alone. Do you realize that's legally considered neglect in this state? I could call Child Protective Services right now. That got their attention. Robert's face paled slightly, and Eleanor's eyes narrowed. You wouldn't dare, she hissed. We were only gone a few hours, and Madison is perfectly fine. Stop being hysterical, she added. I'm not being hysterical, I replied, my voice calm but firm. I'm being a mother who came home to find her daughter alone, terrified, and scrubbing floors on her hands and knees, while you told her she's not a real member of this family. Robert at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. We never said that, he muttered. Really? I asked. Because Madison told me that you both have repeatedly told her she doesn't have Henderson blood and should be grateful we took her in because nobody else wanted her. Eleanor rolled her eyes. Children exaggerate. Besides, it's simply factual that she's not related by blood. We've never been shy about that. She's 8 years old, I shouted, unable to keep my voice steady anymore. She's 8 years old, and she is related. She's your son's daughter. Scott adopted her legally. She bears your last name. What more do you want? Robert interjected, clearly trying to defuse the situation. We may have made some poor choices today, but you're blowing this out of proportion. We've been taking care of Madison all week with no issues. No issues? I laughed incredulously. Madison told me everything. How you excluded her from outings, made her do chores while Lily played, gave Lily better food, new toys, more attention. She told me about being grabbed hard enough to leave bruises, being told she whines too much, being left alone yesterday too. This wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment. This was a pattern. Just then, my phone rang. It was Scott. I answered immediately and put it on speaker. Scott, Eleanor said, her voice suddenly syrupy sweet. Your wife is making ridiculous accusations. We've been taking wonderful care of Madison, but you know how challenging she can be. We simply had to discipline her today for misbehavior by leaving her alone for hours while you took Lily to Adventure World. She needed to learn her lesson, Robert defended. What's wrong with that? Eleanor asked. Scott's voice came through, tight with controlled anger. What's wrong, he said slowly, is that you abandoned my daughter. You neglected her. You made her feel unwelcome in her own home and unwanted in her own family. Oh, please, Eleanor scoffed. She's being oversensitive, just like her mother. Honestly, Scott, I don't know what you expected. Blood is thicker than water, after all. It's only natural we have a special bond with Lily. The room went dead silent. Even Eleanor seemed to realize she'd gone too far. What did you just say? Scott's voice was dangerously quiet. I just meant, Eleanor started, but Scott cut her off. I heard exactly what you meant, Mom, and it's unacceptable. Madison is my daughter, not my stepdaughter, not my adopted daughter, my daughter. And if you can't treat her with the same love and respect you show Lily, then you don't deserve to be in her life. Eleanor's face twisted with indignation. How dare you speak to me that way, after everything we've done for you? We're your parents, she added. Scott's voice hardened. I'm Madison's parent. That means my job is to protect her even from you. I took over then, keeping my voice calm but resolute. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to pack your things and leave our house tonight. You can go to a hotel or drive back home. I don't care which. But you're not staying here, and you will not have unsupervised access to Madison again. This is absurd, Eleanor sputtered. Robert, say something. Robert seemed torn. His gaze shifted between Eleanor and the phone. Son, I think we all need to calm down and discuss this rationally. We made a mistake today, but surely cutting us off from our granddaughter is an overreaction. It's not just today, I said firmly. It's every comment, every comparison, every time you've made Madison feel less than. It's the fact that she genuinely believes she deserves to be treated worse than Lily, because she's not a real Henderson. And it stops now, Scott added. I'm getting on a flight in an hour. By the time I get home, I expect you to be gone. We can discuss future supervised visits after Madison has had time to heal from this. Lily, who had been quiet during this exchange, suddenly spoke up. Is Madison okay? Can I see her? Her innocent concern highlighted the absurdity of the situation. Even a child Lily's age could see something was wrong. I knelt down to Lily's level. Madison is okay, but she's resting right now. This isn't about you, Lily. You didn't do anything wrong. Eleanor seized on this, her voice rising dramatically. See what you're doing. You're driving a wedge between the cousins. You're breaking up this family. No, I said, standing up straight. You did that when you decided one grandchild was more valuable than the other. This is ridiculous, Eleanor snapped, grabbing her purse. Come on, Robert. We don't have to stand here and be insulted. Where's Madison? Robert, please, I said firmly. She's been through enough. I'll have her call you when she's ready. Eleanor let out a dramatic huff. Fine, but don't think this is the end of it. We'll be speaking to Scott privately, without your influence. Go ahead, I said. But you should know he's heard everything you've said tonight, and he stands with me and Madison 100%. As they gathered their belongings, Eleanor turned to me one last time. You know, Amber, we always thought Scott could do better. Now we know we were right. Her words were meant to hurt, but I simply smiled. Funny, I was just thinking the same thing about Madison's grandparents. They left in a flurry of slammed doors and screeching tires, taking a confused Lily with them. As the sound of their car faded, I leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. The confrontation had gone as well as could be expected, but I knew this was only the beginning of what would likely be a long, painful family rift. I climbed the stairs to Madison's room, finding her sitting on her bed with Mr. Flopsy. She had clearly heard at least some of the commotion. Did Grandma and Grandpa leave because of me? She asked in a small voice. I sat beside her, pulling her close. No, sweetheart. They left because of their own bad choices. None of this is your fault. Will they come back? She asked, her voice full of concern. I chose my words carefully. Not to stay with us, but maybe someday, if they can learn to be kind and respectful to everyone in our family, we might see them again for short visits. Madison nodded, seeming to accept this. Is Daddy coming home? Yes. He'll be here in a few hours, I said with a smile. He can't wait to see you. As Madison drifted off to sleep that night, clutching Mr. Flopsy in her arms, I sat beside her bed, watching her peaceful face. I had always promised to protect her, and today, I had kept that promise. There would be fallout, difficult conversations, and likely more confrontations to come. But seeing Madison sleep without fear or tension in her small body told me I had done the right thing. Some family ties, I realized, aren't worth preserving if they damage the people we love most. Scott arrived home just after midnight, exhausted from travel but wired with adrenaline. I met him at the door, falling into his embrace and finally, allowing myself to cry now that Madison was asleep and I didn't need to be strong for her. I can't believe they did this, Scott whispered, his voice rough with emotion. My own parents. How could they treat her that way? We sat at the kitchen table, the same floor Madison had been forced to scrub now clean beneath our feet. I recounted everything in detail, Madison's exact words, the state I'd found her in, the revelations of the past few days, the treatment she had endured. Scott listened, his face growing increasingly pained. I knew they favored Lily, he said, running his hands through his hair, but I never imagined they'd go this far, leaving her alone, telling her she's not real family. He trailed off, unable to find words adequate to express his disgust. Have they called you? I asked. Scott nodded grimly. Multiple times. I texted that I'd speak to them tomorrow. I couldn't handle it tonight. The next morning, Madison was overjoyed to find Scott home. She threw herself into his arms with a squeal of delight that warmed my heart, a glimpse of her usual exuberance returning. Over breakfast, we had a family meeting, keeping the conversation age-appropriate but honest. Grandma and Grandpa made some very bad choices, Scott explained, holding Madison's small hand in his. And when adults make bad choices that hurt children, there have to be consequences, like when I get a timeout? Madison asked. Similar, I said, smiling softly. Except their timeout is going to be much longer, and they won't be able to spend time with you unless another adult we trust is there too. Madison considered this. Are they mad at me? No, sweetheart, Scott assured her. They're probably upset about the situation, but none of this is your fault. I need you to really hear that, okay? Nothing you did caused this. Madison nodded, though I could tell she wasn't entirely convinced. We decided that family therapy would be essential moving forward, both for Madison to process what had happened and for us parents to learn how best to support her. Later that day, while Madison was engaged with a movie, Scott called his parents. I sat beside him as he put the phone on speaker. We've been worried sick, Eleanor said immediately. After the way you and Amber threw us out last night. Mom, Scott interrupted firmly. I'm calling to make our position absolutely clear. What you and Dad did was neglect and emotional abuse. You left Madison alone for hours. You consistently treated her as less than Lily. You made her feel unwanted in her own family. That is unacceptable and will not happen again. Scott, you're blowing this out of proportion, Robert interjected. Yes, we made a mistake leaving her alone, but all this talk of abuse is extreme, is it? Scott challenged. You told my daughter that she's not really family? That she should be grateful anyone wanted her? Do you have any idea what that does to a child? We were just being honest, Eleanor defended. She's old enough to understand the difference between biological and adopted family. There is no difference, Scott exploded. Not in love, not in commitment, not in how she should be treated. Madison is my daughter in every way that matters. The conversation deteriorated from there, with Eleanor and Robert minimizing their actions, deflecting blame, and ultimately threatening to involve the extended family if we insisted on overreacting. Scott ended the call by reiterating our position. No unsupervised contact with Madison, and any future visits will be brief and monitored. True to their word, Eleanor and Robert rallied the family troops. Scott's aunts, uncles, and cousins began calling, most of them taking the in-laws' watered-down version of events at face value. She just wanted to give Lily a special day, one aunt insisted. Madison was being difficult, claimed. An uncle who'd never even met her. The pressure was intense, but we stood firm. A few family members, notably Scott's brother Michael, seemed skeptical of the narrative being spun. Michael called a week after the incident. Lily's been upset, he said. She keeps asking about Madison and why everyone's fighting. What really happened? Scott told him everything unvarnished. There was a long silence when he finished. Jesus, Michael finally breathed. Mom left her alone for hours and said those things about her not being real family? Yes, Scott confirmed. And there's more we haven't even told you. Another pause. I believe you, Michael said, his voice heavy. Lily mentioned something about Madison having to clean while she got to play. I didn't think much of it at the time, but God, I'm sorry. Is Madison okay? That conversation marked a turning point. Michael became an unexpected ally, standing up to his parents and correcting the false narrative being spread through the family. He even arranged for Lily and Madison to have video calls, maintaining their cousin bond despite the adult conflict. Meanwhile, we focused on Madison's healing. The family therapist we found specialized in adoption and blended families. Dr. Lorraine Carter was warm but direct, creating a safe space for Madison to express feelings she'd been bottling up. Madison, how did you feel when Grandma said you weren't real family? Dr. Carter asked during one session. Madison clutched Mr. Flopsy tighter, sad and scared, like maybe Daddy would stop loving me to someday. Scott's eyes filled with tears. Never, he whispered fiercely. Never in a million years. Over the weeks that followed, we learned that the incident we discovered was merely the most extreme example of a pattern of differential treatment that had been going on for years. Madison had internalized so much, believing she deserved less. Because she wasn't really a Henderson, children are remarkably adaptive, Dr. Carter explained to us in a parents-only session. When they're treated differently, they often assume it's because of something they've done or something inherently wrong with them, rather than recognizing it as unfair treatment by adults who should know better. The first family gathering after the incident was Madison's school spring concert. We knew the in-laws would attend, as Lily was also performing. We prepared Madison carefully, assuring her we would be by her side the entire time. What if Grandma tries to talk to me alone? Madison asked anxiously as we dressed for the event. That won't happen, I promised. Dad or I will be with you every minute. And if anyone says anything that makes you uncomfortable, you tell us immediately. The tension in the elementary school auditorium was palpable when we arrived. Eleanor and Robert stood with Michael and his wife, Lily between them in her concert outfit. They spotted us immediately. Eleanor's face tightened, while Robert looked away. We guided Madison to her classroom, deliberately taking a path that avoided the in-laws. After leaving her with her teacher, we found seats far from where they were sitting. Michael, however, made a point of coming over to greet us. How's Madison doing? He asked genuinely. Better, Scott replied. The therapy is helping. How about Lily? Confused. But okay. She misses Madison, Michael said, his voice soft. Michael hesitated before adding, Mom and Dad are still, well, you know. But I want you to know I understand why you did what you did. I would have done the same for Lily. That simple. Acknowledgement meant more than he could have known. After the concert, we couldn't avoid the in-laws entirely. They approached us as we waited for Madison outside her classroom. She sang beautifully. Robert offered awkwardly. Yes, she did. I agreed neutrally. Eleanor didn't speak, merely studying Madison with a tight expression. When Madison emerged from the classroom, she shrank against my side. Her earlier confidence from the performance had evaporated. Hello, Madison, Robert said, bending slightly. You did a wonderful job up there. Thank you, Madison whispered, not meeting his eyes. Well, Eleanor finally spoke, her voice brittle. I suppose we should congratulate you on turning our granddaughter against us so thoroughly. Scott's warning voice came through just then. Mom, not here, not now. When then? She demanded. You've shut us out completely over one mistake. It wasn't one mistake, I said quietly but firmly. And this isn't the place to discuss it. We left shortly after, with Madison unusually quiet in the back seat. Are you okay, sweetie? I asked, turning to check on her. She nodded slowly. Grandma still looks mad at me. She's not mad at you, Scott assured her, meeting her eyes in the rearview mirror. She's mad at the situation and at grown-up things you don't need to worry about. As the weeks went by, we maintained our boundaries but allowed for small, supervised interactions. Dinners at a restaurant, an hour at the park with everyone present. Eleanor was particularly resistant to this new normal. This is ridiculous, she complained during one of these gatherings. I can't even speak to Madison without you hovering. That's right, I said, keeping my voice calm. These are the boundaries we've set. You can either respect them or not see Madison at all. Your choice. Robert, on the other hand, seemed to be trying harder. He brought Madison appropriate gifts, asked about her interests, and refrained from comparing her to Lily. Whether this was genuine change or simply better behavior under supervision, it was at least a step in the right direction, the most unexpected. Development was the blossoming bond between Madison and Lily. Once the cousins were allowed to interact without the toxic influence of favoritism, they genuinely grew closer. They had video calls, supervised playdates, and even enjoyed themselves together. It was proof that the problem had never been with the children. "I wish I could have a sleepover at Lily's house," Madison said one day, about 4 months after the incident. "That's not possible right now," I replied gently. "But maybe someday, if things continue to improve, because of what Grandma and Grandpa did," she asked, her voice quiet but full of understanding. "Yes," I answered, my voice steady. "We need to make sure you're always safe and respected. That's our job as your parents." Madison thought for a moment before speaking again. "It wasn't because I'm not a real Henderson, was it? It was because they were being mean." "Exactly," Scott said with pride in his voice. "And being a Henderson isn't about blood or DNA. It's about love and respect, and treating each other with kindness." 6 months after that terrible day, we discovered through therapy that there had been even more instances of favoritism and emotional manipulation than we had initially realized. What we thought were small, isolated moments formed a clear pattern of behavior that had been designed to make Madison feel less than. Dr. Carter reassured us. "Madison is young and resilient. With consistent support, love, and patience, she can recover from this. The work you're doing now is helping her rewire her brain to understand that she is loved, worthy, and equal." Scott and I committed ourselves fully to this work, creating new family traditions that celebrated our unique family story. We read books about adoption, talked openly about different types of families, and made sure Madison knew her origin story was one of love, not loss. Slowly but surely, we began to see our daughter emerge from the shadow of insecurity that had been cast over her. The light returned to her eyes. Her laughter became more frequent. The constant need for reassurance faded. She was healing, and so were we. 6 months after that fateful day, our family had settled into a new normal. Madison was flourishing in therapy. Scott and I had strengthened our united front as parents, and our relationship with his parents had evolved into something cautiously manageable. Though not completely healed, the most significant breakthrough came unexpectedly during a supervised lunch at a neutral restaurant. Madison had gone to the restroom with me, and Scott stepped away to take a work call, leaving Robert and Eleanor briefly alone with their thoughts. When we returned, Eleanor was uncharacteristically quiet. She picked at her food for several minutes before suddenly addressing Madison directly. "I owe you an apology," she said, her voice wavering slightly. What we did was wrong. Very wrong. I should never have left you alone. And I should never have said those hurtful things about you not being family." Madison stared at her grandmother, clearly surprised by this sudden change of tone. "It's okay," she said automatically, the response of a child trained to smooth over adult emotions. "No, it's not okay," Robert interjected gently. "Your grandmother is right. We treated you unfairly, and there's no excuse for that. We're very sorry, Madison." I watched Madison carefully, ready to step in if needed, but she seemed to be processing their words thoughtfully. "Why did you do it?" she asked, the simple but direct question that only a child would have the courage to ask. Eleanor looked stricken. She exchanged a glance with Robert before answering. I think I was holding on to old-fashioned ideas about what makes a family. I was wrong. Being family isn't about blood. It's about love. And your daddy loves you very much. That means you're every bit of a Henderson as Lily or anyone else." It wasn't a perfect apology. It didn't address all the emotional abuse or the years of favoritism, but it was a start, and I could see from Madison's face that it meant something to her. "Does this mean we can be friends now?" Madison asked cautiously, Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "I would like that very much." That conversation marked a turning point. Though the road ahead would still be long and complicated, Eleanor began individual therapy at Dr. Carter's recommendation, working through her own deeply ingrained beliefs about family and bloodlines. Robert, who had always been more passive, began making an effort to build a relationship with Madison based on her actual personality, not comparisons to Lily. The cousins' relationship continued to blossom, free from the toxic favoritism that had once tainted it. Lily, now understanding more about what had happened, became surprisingly protective of Madison. Grandma, you have to ask Madison what she wants too, not just me, Lily would say when Eleanor slipped into old patterns. The accountability from her biological granddaughter seemed to impact Eleanor more profoundly than anything Scott or I could say. Scott's relationship with his parents had been fundamentally altered. The blind trust was gone, replaced by cautious vigilance. But as they demonstrated consistent effort to change, Scott gradually allowed himself to hope for real reconciliation. I never thought I'd have to parent my own parents, he confessed one night. But that's essentially what we're doing, teaching them how to behave appropriately with our child. You're breaking a cycle, I pointed out. Think about it, your parents probably learned these attitudes from their parents. By standing firm now, you're ensuring Madison won't carry these harmful beliefs forward. The extended family, which had initially rallied behind Eleanor and Robert, eventually began to understand the gravity of what had occurred. Michael, Scott's brother, became one of our strongest allies, serving as a bridge between both sides of the family divide. Mom admitted to me she doesn't know why she treated Madison that way, Michael told Scott during a brother's lunch. She said she never consciously decided to favor Lily. She just did. I think she's genuinely trying to understand it now. Madison's healing was our primary focus throughout this period. The emotional wounds inflicted by years of subtle and not so subtle discrimination run deep, but children are remarkably resilient when given the right support. I used to think there was something wrong with me, Madison confided during a family therapy session. Like I wasn't good enough to be a real Henderson. But now I know that's not true. I am a real Henderson, and a real Wilson too. I have two families that love me. Her words brought tears to my eyes. After everything she'd been through, my daughter had emerged with wisdom beyond her years and a stronger sense of self. By the 1-year mark after the incident, we had established a new family equilibrium. Eleanor and Robert were allowed supervised visits, which gradually increased in duration as they demonstrated consistent respect for our boundaries. Madison felt safe with them again, though she remained more guarded than with other family members. The goal isn't to pretend this never happened, Dr. Carter reminded us during a family session that included the grandparents. The goal is to learn from it, grow from it, and build healthier relationships moving forward. Eleanor nodded, her usual defensiveness notably absent. I never want Madison to feel unwanted or less than again. I'm still learning, but I'm committed to doing better for her. For the first time, I believed her. We celebrated Madison's 9th birthday with a party that included both sides of the family. Watching her blow out the candles surrounded by people who truly valued her for exactly who she was, I reflected on the painful journey that had brought us here. Finding Madison alone that day, scrubbing floors and being told she wasn't real family, had been one of the most horrific moments of my life. But the aftermath, the boundaries we set, the therapy we embraced, the difficult conversations we had ultimately strengthened our family in ways I couldn't have imagined. Most importantly, Madison now knew with absolute certainty that she was loved, protected, and worth fighting for. No child should ever have to learn that lesson through trauma. But the lesson itself was invaluable. Watching her laugh with Lily, accept a carefully chosen gift from Eleanor, and beam at Scott's enthusiastic photography, I knew we had done the right thing. We had refused to accept the unacceptable. We had protected our daughter when she couldn't protect herself. And in doing so, we had taught her the most important lesson of all, that love isn't about blood or biology. It's about choice, commitment, and unwavering support.